During last week's City Council meeting at Barrie City Hall, the council members engaged in various matters of business. On the weekend of June 17 and 18, Bills 67 and 68 emerged on the agenda for the June 21st City Council meeting. The proposed legislations aim to outlaw the distribution of food and other essentials on public land, with fines ranging from $500 to $100,000. These potential amendments sparked a significant outcry on local, provincial, and federal levels. Protesters set up tents outside the City Hall, and the federal housing advocate stationed at the Canadian Human Rights Commission wrote to the council denouncing the proposed bylaws and urging abstention from their passage. A record number of protesters rallied outside the City Hall and later gathered in the chambers for silent protest. Faced with this unexpected and substantial public opposition and a robust awareness campaign that drew national criticism, the Barrie Council decided to reassess Bill 67 and 68. These bills are now directed back to the city staff for a more comprehensive review. In the course of the meeting, Deputy Mayor Robert Thompson and Councillor Sergio Morales introduced a motion without notice proposing to use 29 Sperling Drive as a warming and cooling center as well as food distribution hub. Mayor Alex Nuttall recognized the site's distance from downtown, which hosts the majority of the homeless population and associated support services. Despite this, the proposal received unanimous approval from the council. Further business conducted during the council meeting involved several deputations concerning the development of 15 Harvey Road and 49 Collier Street. Please consult the provided timestamps to examine the relevant portions of the video.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
The City of Barrie acknowledges the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We also acknowledge the Wendat Nation Huron, who occupied these lands prior to the middle of the 17th century. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and recognizing the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land. We're committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. You may be seated. Now, members of the council, I understand that there is a request for the procession of the bylaws 67 and 68 in advance of the rest of the agenda. Could I get a mover and seconder of that? That's Councillor Kungle and Councillor Riepma. And all in favor? That is approved. So we'll move to the bylaws for 67, 68.
Thank you, Mayor Nutt. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that leave be granted to introduce the bills, and these bills be read a first, second, third time and finally passed. Bill 67 and 68.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Corser. The leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 67 and Bill 68. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nutt. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that Bill 67, 68 be referred to staff to modernize the wording in bylaw 2019-059 and amend 2004-18 as amended and report back to General Committee. And I can speak to this.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
I can speak to it. So, thank you. So, looking at what we had done and put forward the motion originally, with some really good dialogue with one of our service providers and consultation, that we've come to a collaborated effort to look at some of the challenges we've had for our public, and realizing the current bylaws that are in place are actually archaic, and the fines that we've read and people are really upset about, which we understand, are the current bylaws today. So with working with a lot of my colleagues and a lot of back and forth, and one of our really good service partners, we actually realized that the bills need to be modernized. There was never an intent, which is already existing, that we would ever criminalize the kind individual efforts of people. And this was not the intended of this motion, and it's already on the books today. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Is there any other speaking to that? Sure. I'd like to get.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall. I'm pleased to see that these have then been deferred back to staff and that they will track back to a general committee where we can have time to discuss edits in the form that they take shape. And in addition to that, without having a date set, just still want to remind the public that in encompassing the broader pieces overall, it's important to make sure everyone's aware that we do have a meeting set for September the 19th overall, around getting some more updates. But my understanding, as Councillor Thompson, Deputy Mayor Thompson identified, was that we've got language in there from 2004 that still included individuals and persons. And so it will be great to see that language removed and then have broad public consultation on the new bylaw that will go forward and what that means.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. And yeah, I think if people were to go back to the original motion, you'll see the language did not include this wording that has been such a concern for our residents. And I've had many Ward 8 residents reach out, and all those I've tried to connect with and reinforce that is not the intent. Charitable acts of kindness, giving are central to our community, and we do not want to punish that. That's not the intent. So I'm really pleased that what we've been able to do is uncover that the language that we have today actually does exactly that. So what's important moving forward is we have a chance to improve this. And there's no interest in stopping people from being kind, from giving a bottle of water on a hot day, a coffee on a cold winter evening. So this is not the intention. So the other part I want people to remember too is there's some really positive elements, excuse me, in this motion. We're going to have a lunch program. We're going to have a cooling, warming center that is able to keep people safe from the elements, which is really important. So, and there's others as well, but I think we've heard you, we understand you, and we agree with you. So I look forward to the work being done and having a better bylaw that reflects what people really want. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Nettle, and thank you, Councillor Harris. I think you sort of said what I wanted to say. The intent of the original motion was not to deter kindness, and I'm reading signs here, don't criminalize kindness, and again, that's not what the intent of the motion is. As Jim pointed out, there was a number of solutions posed, and I welcome the voices. I welcome and thank everyone who's coming here tonight to voice their opinions. Those who have reached out to offer solutions, thank you. This is exactly what we're looking to do, is offer solutions to really address the long-term issues that are in front of us right now. We have a homelessness crisis on our hands. We are all well aware of that, and everyone has a role to play. And, oh, sorry. There is, unfortunately, and there's services that people need in our community. So I appreciate the solutions that are brought forward, and Council is more than willing and open to listen to them. I agree with Councillor Harris' remarks that some of these previous bylaws do need to be amended, and so we've heard you when we've listened, and we will be amending them. But I also want to direct people to read the original motion, so not the Bill 67 and 68, but the original motion that was presented and some of the ideas and solutions in there. And again, we welcome your feedback on what those elements of the original motion are. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other members of council who'd like to comment or ask questions on the referral motion? Councillor Corser.
I'm very thrilled to have this being relooked at and re-examined. And I want to reiterate what is being said around the table. I was incredibly concerned about this when the motion came forward, but the motion is full of a lot of really good things. And I don't think anybody at our table or at council or at the city ever meant any ill intent. And I think that there's so many more better things that were packaged in that motion as it came forward, and maybe we needed to take some better looks at other parts of that motion, and that is what we're going to do. We're going to go back, we're going to discuss it, we're going to bring it forth, we're going to update it, modernize it, and I think you'll see some positive changes coming forward. So I'm very proud to be sitting on council today. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Councillor Corser. Any other comments or questions from the table? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nettle. Most of the things regarding these things that we're putting pause on sending to staff have been discussed, so I'll try to put a new spin of it. I heard housing is a right, I heard rehabilitation, I'm seeing some YIMBY signs, love thy neighbor, housing is a human right in the back. So let's take this as a pivot point where we take this energy that we have in this crowd, and many of the people behind you, I'm seeing some nods in the crowd from housing advocates, let's use this. We have a draft 2 of our zoning bylaw. In English, that means the document that talks about how we're going to build housing moving forward, the document that says that we need more density, we need less red tape, and don't think of the developers, think of getting more units so people can live. Now, that includes people at the lower end of the spectrum, transitional housing, all the way up to luxury housing. So take this passion, and I'm not trying to patronize, but I'm recognizing the message you're sending. Take that passion, read draft 2 that's coming up from our staff this summer, go to it line by line, and try with this passion to cut the red tape that is getting in the way of building more housing, and that is keeping people either poorly sheltered or just flat out unsheltered for anybody who is having trouble with renting or even buying. And that is how we can move the needle on housing as a right, on yes in my backyard, because it's not just about focusing on whether you can hand somebody a water bottle at the park or not. There's many more things, and this doesn't need to be a ping pong thing where one side thinks they won their core values and then they move on. There needs to be continuity, and one of the ways we can address that is with housing. So for those that kind of missed the middle of what I said, draft 2 of the zoning bylaw will be posted on the city website this summer. So if you think housing is just as important as part of the equation, engage in that, because I'm as pro housing as they come on council, and we also need we need support on that.
Thank you, Councillor Morales. Any other councillors would like to speak to the referral motion? You're seeing none. You know, I think it's been certainly an interesting few days in terms of the bylaws themselves. And the motion that we passed 5 weeks ago tonight asked for some specific language with regards to some specific items really down at our waterfront was what the issue was. Through that, our staff came and updated the bylaws themselves on those specific items. The rest of the bylaw was left as it was before. And it doesn't matter whether you were part of the 2003 to 2006 council, the 2006 through 2010, which I was part of, the 2010 through 2014 that I was part of, the 2014 through 2018 council, the 2018 through 2022 council. If you were part of those councils, you were part of a council that oversaw a bylaw that said individuals couldn't give anything to other individuals in public spaces. And I don't think any of those councils realized that it was there. I certainly didn't as a member of council. I don't think anyone around this table did. I don't think any member of the audience did. And so I think it's really important that the referral does go back to our staff and that that information or that wording is actually brought up to date and it's no longer reflective of the look or view of the council or the city of Barrie. In terms of the overall, I would say, strategy that the city is employing, you know, we have been asked, past councils have been asked, please help us get a warming and cooling center. This council is putting the funding in place to get that done. Past councils have been asked for reunification funding from two of our agencies that came in and sat with me in the Huronia B room. And this council's funding that to happen, helping those agencies. There has been an issue for I don't know how long with regards to the release of individuals from the CNCC to the bus terminal in Barrie that has resulted in individuals being incarcerated in the summertime, being dropped on the side of the road in Barrie in the wintertime with the same clothes that they were incarcerated in the summertime. It's ridiculous. And we need to make sure that the city of Barrie continues to help with the funding for the solution with the province with that too. And finally, the food program. 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, the city of Barrie as a whole, I don't mean council, I don't mean the corporation, received the bad news that the Salvation Army was no longer able to continue with the food programs. And that's left a big hole in services that were needed for the most vulnerable in the community. And the city of Barrie has stood up and said, as a council, we're going to fund that, right? To the tune of $1.65 million over the next 2 years. And more than that, we're now working with the county to increase the funding available for these programs as well. So there's a lot happening. But I think one of the structural issues that we need to make sure as we're going forward, council, and we've all talked about this, I think we've all felt it, is that these positive items need to be happening either in advance or at the same time as any of the changes we're asking in terms of behaviors. Because if we only end up with the behavioral changes and we don't have the positive items in place, it leaves the city in a position where those who are most vulnerable are not getting the help going forward. So I think as a city, I think as a city council, I want to thank everybody for putting their, quite frankly, the people's money where their mouths were and meeting the need of the day in terms of the requests that we're receiving from the social service agencies. And I know that through this and through all of the work that's being done day in and day out, we're going to continue to have strong partners in terms of the agencies themselves, individuals in the community. And I think the clear message that I want to put out is that with regards to this motion or the referral to staff, the existing bylaw that says that you can't provide those types of helps in public spaces, our staff are not going to be trying to implement or to enforce any of that between now and the date that the actual wording changes. So there should be zero fear out there that a bylaw officer or a peace officer is going to come and ask you not to give water to somebody who needs it. And hopefully we'll get the wording back soon so that we can permanently change it. But in terms of between now and then, there won't be any enforcement in that direction either. I also want to apologize. I started about 20 minutes late. and I want to apologize for that. I first was coaching my son's soccer, got a little bit behind, and then I did some media. So the good news that I shared with the media on the way in is that he was winning 2-0, and I hope he's still winning 2-0. And I probably lost the votes of the parents on the other team. So there it is. We'll now move on to the vote itself. Would you like to proceed with the record, or would you just like to proceed with a general? General's good? Okay. All those in favor of the referral back to staff? That passes unanimously, and that's for Bills 67 and 68. So members of the public who are exiting, there's also a door over here that you can use to get out. And we'll just take a 5-minute break until everybody's out. So we're going to proceed to perfect. We're going to move now to the confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the City Council meeting held on June the 7th, 2023 have been circulated. Are there any corrections? Seeing none, they are adopted as printed and circulated. We have no awards and recognition or report from officers this evening, so we're going to move on to deputations on committee reports. There are 7 requests for deputations and an emergency deputation. The emergency deputation request was received from Ellen Ferris concerning motion 23-155, the 2023 Development Charge Background Study and Bylaw. As a request was received after the printing of the agenda, a two-thirds majority vote is required by members of council in order for the emergency deputation to proceed. I'm going to call a vote on the emergency deputation, on whether it can proceed or not. So all those in favor to allow the deputant, and it is approved unanimously. Next, I'll call on the list of the names in the agenda. Once your name is called, you are joining the meeting in person. Please approach the podium to deliver the deputation. If you're joining the council meeting virtually, please unmute yourself or press number 6 by phone. Please note that in accordance with the city's procedural bylaw, a maximum of 5 minutes is permitted per deputation. The first deputation is by Simon Captain concerning motion 23-G-153, Bradford Street Corridor, Study Municipal Class Environmental Assessment, wards 2 and 8. I'm told this is going to happen in person. Simon, are you here? Simon, I apologize if I did not pronounce your last name correctly, and if you could...
It's yeah, most people pronounce it that way, so that's okay. It's actually kaptein, but most people say captain, so that's fine.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming out this evening.
Before I start my 5 minutes, I would just like to note that although I asked Transportation Department conversation with Mr. Gradix, believe is his name, in early February, followed up a couple times, I did not get my answer until June 13th, the morning thereof. And I have part of my answer, but not my full answer, and therefore I have made a mistake in my calculation of the amount of land that I will actually lose and my kids will lose because of this. But I'll start and hopefully I can revise it after this meeting so that the numbers reflect more accurate. Thank you. Okay. My name is Simon Kaptein. Myself and my two children own 244, 246, and 248 Bradford Street. Part of my deputation, I've put two attachments there. And if you look at attachment number 1, you can clearly see that I'm not losing 10%, but we're going to lose about 40% of our land. And affordability is a big part, of course. Everybody knows there's a housing crisis. So if you do the numbers, and originally in my deputation I said we're going to lose 240 square meters. It's actually more 835 square meters or 9,000 square feet. So if we do the computation, being so close to the transit hub and the Allendale station, you know, these lands should be intensified and not be taken away by straightening out a road. The current zoning allows for a minimum 12 stories. So in my calculation, the original number, I had 36 families' homes would be taken away, but based on the land that I'm using, that we're losing, 40%, that would equate to about 125 families not being housed. And of course, the higher you go, the more housing units would be lost. I don't think the city should be planning for auto-centric arterial roads like Bayfield or Mapleview. They should lower the speeds, especially when you intensify. When you go high, right, you should create more wider sidewalks, bicycle lanes. If you're putting in more lanes and you're straightening out roads, you know, you're increasing the speed. People are going to drive, you see a straight road, they're going to go faster, not going to go slower. So that's one of the big points I wanted to bring out as well. You know, we should try to promote a more active modes of transportation. The city finances. Of course, with so many units being lost when they take the land away, right, that would mean that, you know, on a 12-story development, 125 units would not pay property taxes, 125 families would not contribute to the local communities and spend their money. So there would be a lot of revenue that would be lost. I also, from research, noticed that the Transportation Asset Management Plan referenced that there's going to be a 48.4 million deficit over the next 10 years. So I asked the question, does building more roads at $3,552 per lineal meter, that's from the Barrie Transportation Master Plan, based on a 34-meter wide road that's proposed, and then having to maintain that road after, is this fiscally responsible, you know, to approve? Shouldn't we look at, you know, narrower roads so there's less to maintain and less money to be spent up front? Also, what I noticed is then on the Bradford corridor, there's a lot of land that needs to be expropriated by the city. The cost, time, efforts, and money that you have to spend to do this, you know, does that make sense? You could scale this plan down and you would not have to expropriate all those lands of those properties along Bradford Street. And I also think, and I mentioned it in my deputation letter, certain people will obviously want to wait out development, right? Because they're not into giving their land up for free. So, you know, it would be who's going to make a move first. And with the housing crisis that we have, I think you want to try to get as much development as you can so that houses will be and apartments will be built quicker and not being delayed. Safety. You know, is it generally transportation engineering's best practice to straighten out a road and increase design speeds in an urban growth center? And that's a question that I have for you. I would like to ask council to inquire what the design speed of the current road is and what the design speed of the proposed roadway is. Is there a sightline issue? is the answer to straighten out a road and increase the speed? No, to me it would be you lower the speed limit, right? And if you narrow the road, right, then people will drive slower as well, right? They're more cautious. The more pavement you have, the faster you're going to go. I guess conclusion, I would like to ask council that they take a hard look at this plan and ask staff if they can report back on what other peer municipalities are planning to widen roads specifically in their downtowns with high densities. I've asked Tara to distribute to the council the approved plan for Hamilton in the urban center, which shows 2 lanes and a high-speed lane and bicycle paths, and it's based on a 26-meter wide road, not 34. And the report itself, you know, references line 26 that this improvement won't solve traffic congestion under the challenging section of the table. So I asked the council to consider if the road widening is the vision they want for their waterfront and GO stations. If you look at the plan on page 7, there's this humongous landscape strip in the middle of this road that's planned. I believe it's 4.2 meters. I mean, is that necessary? I don't know. A scaled-down version of this proposal, or alternative 5 in the staff report, seems to meet the council's strategic priorities better. It will create more housing affordability. It will provide more community safety if you scale it down. There'll be less of an infrastructure investment. You're supporting an active transportation. There's climate benefits to that. And there'll be more responsible governance because of it, because you're increasing the tax base as opposed to increasing infrastructure and maintenance costs.
Sir, I have to...
yeah, I've got one more line and that's
One more
it.
line, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I thank you so much for listening, and I hopefully you can give the points that I raised in this deputation some consideration. And I would like to just give to Tara the scaled-down version that I have prepared, and then you can look at it at your own time. Okay. And I thank you for the time. Okay.
Thank you for your deputation tonight, sir, and council has certainly heard what you've said with regards to the Bradford Street EA and the proposed changes, and it'll be dealt with later on in the meeting this evening, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next deputation is by Alexander Soriano of Aird and Burles LLP on behalf of Urban Development concerning Motion 23G151, Community Benefit Charges Strategy and Bylaw. I'd like to call upon Mr. Soriano to the podium to deliver the deputation. You have 5 minutes for your deputation. Sir, did I nail the last name, or did I?
You got it perfectly, sir.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Good. Well, thank you. You're welcome here to Barrie City Council, and certainly you have 5 minutes for your deputation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council, and good evening to city staff who's here as well. As the mayor has already noted, my name is Alexander Soriano, and I'm a partner at the law firm of Aird and Burles LLP. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of my client, 440 ESSA Developments, Inc., also known as One Urban. Now, my deputation this evening is in relation to the staff report that you have on your agenda tonight. It's FIN 010-23, and it's regarding the proposed new CBC bylaw and study that is before council. And that's also file number 23G151 and proposed bill number 76. Now, One Urban is the owner of 440 ESSA Road in Barrie, which they are proposing to redevelop as a 9-story mixed-use building, and it will contain 262 purpose-built rental units. It's a fully rental building, of which there are going to be 39 units that are secured as affordable dwelling units. In addition, there's going to be 1,070 square meters of ground floor commercial space. Now, zoning for the Essa Road development was approved back in 2022, and because it was a purpose-built rental building with a significant affordable housing component, the City Council approved that development as part of Barrie's Community Improvement Plan Affordable Housing and Redevelopment Grant Program, which is now also known as the CIP. So this is a CIP development. On May 4th of this past year, we submitted a letter from One Urban to the city, providing our clients significant concerns with both the proposed development charge bylaw, which I'll speak to in my second deputation, but as well as the community benefits charge strategy and bylaw, which was released for public consultation. We also made an oral deputation on May 10th at the statutory public meeting for that matter. And tonight I want to address One Urban's concerns with respect to the CBC bylaw, which has the potential to significantly impact rental affordable housing developments like the ones that my client is now proposing on Essa Road. As currently drafted, the CBC bylaw will apply to all developments that add 5 or more stories and 10 or more residential units. If approved in its current form before you today, the CBC bylaw will result in a significant additional levy on developments that have already received approval from the city but have not yet obtained a building permit. And this includes developments like One Urban's rental project at 440 Essa Road, despite the fact that they were approved well before the CBC bylaw was ever contemplated. Now, it's important to note that the proposed CBC bylaw would also capture developments that were previously excluded from the application of the former Section 37 height and density bonusing provisions and policies in the Barrie official plan. One Urban's project is one such case where council did not impose Section 37 bonusing conditions as part of its approval, but which would now be caught by the CBC bylaw. Now, the Planning Act specifically changed and replaced the density bonusing provisions in Section 37 with the new CBC levy. And so we submit that it's both unreasonable and unfair to now require a community benefits charge where density bonusing was determined by this council under Barrie's own official plan to not apply. And finally, and most important, the Essa Road development is part of the city's CIP program, which promotes and incentivizes the development of purpose-built rental developments and affordable housing units here in Barrie. Now, the proposed application of a CBC bylaw to this development and other similar CIP projects will achieve the opposite effect as intended by the CIP by adding already significant development costs and thereby disincentivizing the creation of much-needed purpose-built rental and affordable housing units in the city. Now, we have been actively involved in the city's public consultation process, and we've expressed our concerns about the CBC bylaw with city staff and to council through our deputations and submissions. And we've proposed solutions that would both allow the city to fulfill its goal of collecting CBC levies on new qualifying developments while protecting for those projects, specifically CIP projects, that provide other significant public benefits and contributions from having the CBC charge apply. Now, in order to address this issue, my client, One Urban, is submitting that the CBC bylaw should be amended to include an exemption for certain types of developments that already provide a significant public benefit to their communities and the city as a whole, specifically in the form of rental and affordable housing. And in particular, we recommend that the CIBC bylaw should be amended to include this specific type of exemption. Now, the need for affordable housing here in the city, I think, is well acknowledged as being significant. The bill that was just discussed previous to these submissions, and which Bill 67, makes it clear that homelessness is an important issue in the city, and homelessness is a symptom of the housing crisis. You know, there was a comment made by council, and I think it's very astute, which is that housing is an important part of the equation when dealing with homelessness. And so banning, in order to allow, by applying the CBC bylaw to CIP programs and housing developments, such as my clients, where 39 new affordable housing units will be applied, provides the opposite incentive, where these types of developments should in fact be incentivized by the city. Now, the value of the CIP project...
Mr. Serrano, I have to cut you off at this point with regards to this deputation, as we've far surpassed the 5 minutes.
Thank you.
But I believe you'll be staying up here.
That's correct.
for a
Mr. Mayor.
deputation with regards to the actual DC background study and bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I may, I'll just, if I can just have 20 more seconds on the CBC bylaw.
We'll just take it off of the next one. If you want to finish it off, that's fine, and move right into the next
Sure.
one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As I was saying, the value of the CIP project that my client's development would be providing is quite significant in that it is a community benefit in and of itself. Now, conservative estimate of what the cost or the benefit of the affordable housing component, the 39 units that is being provided as part of this development, would be about $4,110,000. Now, that's a benefit that's already being provided as part of the development as approved, and would effectively offset or be greater than any CBC charge that's anticipated for this development. And so, in terms of what we are asking council to do, the report before you provides 3 alternatives with respect to the CBC bylaw. The 3 alternatives are delaying the implementation of the bylaw until September 1st, exempting or discounting certain types of developments, including rental-only types of developments, and not approving the CBC bylaw in 2023. We are going to strongly recommend that council accept the second recommendation, which is add an exemption to the bylaw for CIP developments, such as my clients, that provide an important community benefit through the form of rental and affordable housing. And if council is not inclined to accept this exemption, we would then highly recommend that council accept the alternatives 1 or 3, which is to delay the implementation of the CBC bylaw to allow projects that have been approved the opportunity to come forward and obtain a building permit without the need for the CBC levy. So those are my submissions with respect to the CBC bylaw. I'll jump into my submissions with respect to the second matter that I was intending to speak to here today. And that's with respect to staff report FIN 9236014, which is with respect to the DC bylaw and background study that's before you now as file number 23G155 and bill number 77. Now, as I previously mentioned, we have made submissions on this in the past, both written and oral deputations to council. Now, One Urban has expressed significant concerns with respect to the CBC bylaw and the study. In particular, we're concerned that the study overestimates the development-related capital costs identified in the study, and we're of the opinion that the DC study contains various inaccuracies with respect to assumptions related to post-period benefit and benefits to existing, and these remain concerns for our client. However, notwithstanding these concerns, I do want to speak to a matter that we have also written to council about, and that's with respect to the DC freeze, which my client is entitled to under Section 26.2 of the Development Charges Act. Now, under Section 26.2 of the Act, the development charges that would be applicable for this development are frozen as of the date of the submission of my client's site plan control application, which was made in December 23rd of 2020. Now, that frozen development charge rate is applicable up to 2 years from the date that the site plan control application is approved, but which has not yet occurred. Now, notwithstanding numerous previous discussions with city staff in confirming the applicability of Section 26.2, the Development Charges Act, and the DC freeze to my client's application, we were only recently advised on May 30th from city staff that the approval date for the proposed DC frozen rate timeframe was interpreted as running from the date of the site plan control requirements for processing letter, which was received from the manager of growth and development on June 7th, 2021. Now, according to this interpretation, the 2-year period has already expired as of June 7th, 2023. Now, One Urban was surprised by this interpretation and strongly disagrees. It's clear that the 2-year time frame cannot or have already started as site plan approval for this development has not yet occurred. Now, staff's interpretation of the site plan requirements processing letter representing an approval is demonstrably incorrect. In fact, the letter itself clearly notes that preliminary approval can only occur once all revisions and conditions that are set out in that letter to the site plan drawings are satisfied and the site plan agreement is in fact executed. Now, the letter itself states that the appointed officer, being the issuing authority, grants preliminary approval to site plan application file number, and then the file number for the application, upon registration of the development agreement for the above noted property. That has not occurred. The letter then goes on to state as well that there are certain conditions and requirements that require further changes to the drawings that are required prior to the execution of the site plan agreement. Again, One Urban is working through those conditions with staff, and a further resubmission was just recently made on June 8th of this year, and no site plan agreement has been entered into. So therefore, based on the requirements for processing letter itself, it's clear that the 2-year time frame for the DC freeze has not yet occurred. And so with respect to, we understand that council will be considering this matter by way of a staff report in August, and we strongly urge that council assist with ensuring the proper interpretation of the DC freeze timeframe and the date of site plan approval is respected. And we want to note finally, importantly here, that One Urban is not asking council for an exception to the applicable DC rate for the rental housing development at the 440 Essa Road project, but rather One Urban is simply asking for what it is clearly entitled to under the Development Charges Act. Again, I want to thank council's attention this evening, and want to as well thank staff's continued efforts to engage with us on the various matters that we've spoken to tonight, and I'm available to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your two presentations. Are there any members of council who have questions they would like to ask? Councilor Negussi.
Thank you, Mayor Nettle. That was great deputation. I have one question for staff. Ms. Banfield, can you please explain why the site plan has been updated 4 times and why there have been delays? Is it due to the developer's interest, or does the city requires the developer to update the site plan multiple times?
Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Councillor Negussi. As staff have said, the site plan approval was issued in 2021. The applicant did a revision through a minor variance application to increase the height in 2022. And every time these things change, the plans change and require resubmissions and revisions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Negussi. Thank you, Mr. Soriano, for your 2 deputations this evening. And we'll be dealing with the matter later, 2 matters later on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have 3 deputation requests concerning Staff Report DEV 027-23. I'm sorry, Ellen Ferris of MHBC Planning, Urban Design, and Landscape Architecture. I apologize, I just skipped right past you there. So the same rules apply, 5 minutes, and I'll hand it over to you.
Super. Well, good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to address Council this evening. I appreciate our request was slightly delayed. My name is Ellen Ferris, and I'm an associate with MHBC Planning. I'm here this evening on behalf of Barrie Central Developments, Inc., in relation to the city's proposed development charges bylaw and community benefits charge bylaw. Council should also be in receipt of a letter provided by my colleague, Mr. Trevor Hawkins, regarding this matter as well. Barrie Central Developments, Inc. are owners of the land located at 34 to 50 Bradford Street. And as council may be aware, a zoning bylaw amendment was recently approved to permit development of 2 residential towers on these lands. The first phase of this development would have a total of 630 residential units. Now, at the time when the zoning bylaw amendment application was filed last year by our client, the development charges were noted by the city to be $42,886 per unit for apartment units with 2 or more bedrooms, and $30,111 per unit for bachelor or 1-bedroom units. It was noted at that time that these rates would be frozen for a maximum of 2 years from the date the zoning bylaw amendment. However, since the proposed development is also subject to site plan control, the city has advised that the rates will be further frozen at the time of site plan application, which is still forthcoming for the project. This evening, council is being asked to consider a new development charges bylaw that proposes a phasing in of rates including the following first-year rates for apartment units, which would be applicable to the proposed development. It's $56,010 per unit for 2 or more bedrooms, and this reflects an increase in 30% from what the project is currently subject to under the existing bylaw. Similarly, we're looking at an increase of 21% for one bedroom or smaller units, which is $36,408 per unit. As council can appreciate, these are significant increases over the span of 15 months and will result in an additional cost of approximately $6 million for the Phase 1 lands. When layered on top of the rising cost of housing and interest rates, the significant increases in development charges will result in financial challenges for the project, which will then result in additional financial costs and burdens for future purchasers. We also note that the proposed increase for singles and semi-detached dwellings in the city is significantly less than those for apartment units, and there are no reductions in development charges for developing in the downtown area where existing municipal services, roads, and other community infrastructure exists. Overall, this project, based on the year 1 rates in the new DC bylaw, will be required to pay more than $30 million in development charges, which is a substantial cost for a redevelopment project in the downtown area with existing roads and municipal services. Now, further to this increase, council is also being asked to consider a community benefits charge, or CBC bylaw, which proposes to levy an additional 4% against the subject lands based on their appraised value, even though this project was submitted and the zoning bylaw amendment approved before this CBC bylaw was even proposed. So the combination of the significant increases in the development charges and the additional costs associated with the CBC bylaw will result in additional costs for Barrie Central Development Inc., which will in turn be passed on to the purchaser, further impacting the affordability of the units for future residents. So on this basis, in order for Barrie Central Developments Inc. to continue to advance their development at 3450 Bradford Street and provide much needed attainable housing for future residents, it's requested that council defer approval of the development charges bylaw or recognize the rates that were frozen at the time that the zoning bylaw amendment was submitted for the project. So I thank you for your time this evening and for your consideration of our client's request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferris, for your presentation. Any questions from Ms. Ferris this evening? I have, okay, Councillor Harvey, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Just a little bit of clarification from staff. The deputant speaks about rates being frozen on 2 previous occasions with this application. Can someone provide some clarity as to if in fact that is the case, and would that still be honored, or I just want some clarity on if they actually were told rates are being frozen, why aren't they being frozen?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey. Yes, the rates do get frozen, and it's in accordance with the legislation. It's in accordance with the Development Charges Act. So, as Ms. Ellen mentioned, is that the rates do get frozen at the time that there's a zoning bylaw application, and the legislation requires that a site plan actually takes precedence over that zoning bylaw application. So while the rates do get frozen at zoning bylaw, if later on the applicant comes in with a site plan, according to the provincial legislation, that site plan date is what's used for the freeze. So we follow what the legislation provides.
Just a follow-up to that then. If that's the case, I assume the way the deputant spoke, that their rates are not frozen as a result of this new development charge bylaw then. So I'm confused, I'll tell you that much, from your first answer to what I believe is the case.
if I can try and clarify that. So the applicant has already submitted a zoning bylaw application, I believe, in 2022. So the rates would have been frozen at that particular time. In some cases, the zoning bylaw application is for, a subdivision. So they wouldn't necessarily require a site plan application. So in those particular situations, they would be paying the rates frozen at that time, up to, 2 years beyond. So they would have 2 years to get building permits, essentially. So, however, in situations where a further step is required to get a site plan, because that land is under site plan control, such as this situation, the freezing of the rates begins at that point in time. It begins at the time that there's a site plan, and then once that application is approved, they have 2 years from that point in time to get a building permit under those frozen rates. So in this particular situation, they got the zoning bylaw under the, let's call it the old DC bylaw, or the current DC bylaw, and so obviously they're concerned with, getting a site plan down the road, which would be frozen at the new DC bylaw, which is anticipated to have higher rates. And so that would be their concern.
Great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Through you to staff, is the rates frozen at a site plan approval with conditions? Or is it a site plan approval that I can draw building permits off of?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Thompson, or Deputy Mayor Thompson. So the rates are technically frozen at the time that the site plan application is made. So when the applicant comes in and makes an application, as long as they've submitted all the documents, the rates are frozen at that particular point in time. Staff will then review the application, will approve that application once they've reviewed it, approved it, and then issue conditions. And at that stage, then the applicant has 2 years from that point to get building permits. It's still frozen at that original date that the application was made. So in reality, they get more than 2 years at that frozen rate.
So just to clarify, the rate when the application is submitted is frozen. The time of the 2 years happens after all the actual site plan is approved without an SB, like no special conditions. Because that's not my understanding. It's from the date of the applicant to submission of the site plan. If there is conditions, the clock is already running.
So if I can clarify that, so the rates are frozen from the date they come in and submit their application, assuming that it's complete. There's no clock running yet at that stage, so it's just frozen. The clock only starts to run once we've approved that application and then issued the conditions for them to satisfy in order to get to a site plan agreement. And so from that time that we issue the conditions, they have 2 years now to satisfy all the conditions to get the site plan agreement and building permit. Otherwise, they would be subject to the new rates at that time.
And just a clarity, to help me understand moving forward, with a site plan with conditions, I'm unable to pull a building permit, correct? So why do we start the time at that point and not at the 2 years of after all conditions are met? And the only reason being is, some conditions are a lot more challenging than others. It's, a garbage receptor or, something along those lines, to something major like a mechanical room or, something in those. So just to have a level playing field, I'm just curious on that.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nuttall. I think, the rationale is really the fact that it's out of the city's control at that stage. And so if the clock wouldn't start running by the time, we issued the conditions and said, here are the list of things you need to do, at the end of the day, all applicants would be wanting to submit an application today and freeze the rate, and then they could literally sit on their hands and do nothing for 5 years, and still have pay that frozen rate, right? Because it's all in their control. So they can then take as much time as they wanted. So it provides, here's a 2-year time frame to get those conditions done and to get, housing built. And it follows, I think, the provincial goal of getting housing built fast, right?
And I can appreciate that. I don't think that would be the intentions, as at that point of zoning and site plan approval, like, people are in big bucks and you've got to, like, it's a lot of money to tie up on, and I fully understand that. Would there be like a negotiation in good faith? Like, if there's a major issue, like, is there a little bit of a window that if it's, like, we only have so much resources in-house, which, we have a building boom and, we're waiting on response from staff or something in a longer period of time, and not to the fault of anybody other than overwhelmed with applications. Would there be something where a developer can work with staff and understand, or is it a drop-dead date of 2 years to the day, or is there a little bit of wiggle room based on?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Deputy Mayor Thompson. Thanks for the question. So as Mark's described, we're following what the Act's, our interpretation of what the Act provides. There is a Section 27 under the Development Charges Act where council could enter into an agreement with a developer to use the word negotiate, but look at opportunities that meet the needs for both parties to work out some kind of arrangement on the payment dates.
Just a question to the deputy. This site is the HIP, is that correct, on the central sites? So your time frame, is that from the original proposal with the Y associated to the development, or is this the second submission of the higher density, like the time frame?
This is, through you, Mr. Mayor, this is related to the zoning bylaw amendment that was approved by council in December of last year. It's 2 towers on a podium. It's no relation to the Y.
Sorry, so the second submission.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the clarity.
Thank you. Thank you for all the questions on this. Ms. Ferris, I have actually a question for you. So when we took office, it was a rush to the finish line to get the appropriate zoning as per the request in place in December. We are 7 months, call it, since that approval took place, and this is the first I've heard of any movement from HIP on this site. And so I guess my question is, if we were to change the interpretation of the development charge background study, would HIP start their building in the foreseeable future?
To answer your question, Mr. Mayor, I can advise that our client has filed their application for pre-consultation for the site plan control process. So they are moving forward with that earlier this month. So things are moving forward with our client.
What's the estimated timeline for getting in the ground?
I would have to circle back with our client on that item. I do not have an estimated timeline on it with me this evening, but they are moving forward with the process.
And quickly through
or I guess through myself. It's been a long day, guys. I don't know if you know that, but it's been a long day. Ms. Banfield, with regards to the timeline of the site plan process, what is the expected, what's the expected timeline based on now pre-consultations being requested?
To you, Mayor Nuttall. So ultimately, they've applied for pre-con that we, as I said, normally is confidential, but they've announced it today. So they've applied for a pre-consultation, I believe, just yesterday. So it hasn't been deemed complete. It hasn't been assigned to a file. We do the turnaround for pre-cons approximately 4-ish weeks for a technical meeting. Comments are given to the applicant, and then they're able to finalize a site plan application at that time. They'll bring that in and we'll process it to get to site plan conditions. It does, again, it's probably another 4-week timeline to get to a technical meeting, and then another couple weeks to get those comments. Staff do issue conditions, approval conditions, and that really is the trigger to get your site plan agreement drawn up. Most of those conditions are satisfied simply by signing the site plan agreement. There is the ability, once conditions are issued, to get pre-servicing agreements to really start moving on the site. Sometimes conditional building permits are available as soon as those conditions are issued, and that's how we tie the timeline for approvals.
So if all the necessary reports and all of the information's there, we're 4 weeks to comments, another 6 weeks to get through to approval, or 8 weeks to get through to conditional site plan?
That's a good estimation, yes.
Okay, so I guess the reason I'm asking this, Ms. Ferris, is because I would be interested to see whether the request here actually has an impact with relation to this project, because I haven't seen a lot of get up and go. There was a lot of talk about this last year, there was a lot of talk about this year before, but in terms of what we've seen the last several months. And so I guess I can't speak for all of council, but where if council's going to be making investments in changes to revenue that builds roads and parks and all that stuff, there needs to be an associated return with it, being the actual housing getting built. And so I'll leave that with you to communicate to your client, but I'm worried that the timelines don't necessarily actually matter with the presentation this evening, because they're going to run out anyways. Anyway, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for coming in and outlining some of the issues that you're facing. And we'll move on to the next 3 deputations for DEV 027-23, which is the zoning bylaw amendment for 15 Harvey Road, Barrie Brine Developments, Inc. in Ward 7. I'll remind everybody there's a maximum 5 minutes permitted per deputation. And I'd like to start by calling Sarah Kahn up to the podium to deliver the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and good evening, members of the council. I live in the community adjacent to 15 Harvey Road, and over the last 3 months, I've been talking to a lot of our neighbors. They started a petition that now has 133 signatures on it, so I've talked to a lot of people, and I'm bringing forward some of their concerns and my own concerns, specifically regarding the 2 multi-unit apartment blocks that are in the staff plan, which is Appendix C. My first concern is regarding the density. The staff plan report did not account for the units within those apartment buildings, which would be, it's possible it would be 539 units, which is equivalent to about 1,400 new residents coming to that neighborhood. And that's just based on average Barrie household numbers. So my request would be for the planners to maybe consider those numbers and when they do their calculations and reassess if this is in fact a high density neighborhood, because the community surrounding it is not high density. Like within a 2-kilometer radius, we don't have high density. The second concern I'm bringing forward is regarding the obstruction of sunlight and compromise of privacy for the residents living on Megan Crescent, specifically the south end of Megan, and then the townhouses towards the end of Megan. The the two apartment blocks that are on the site plan map right now, they are very, very close. They're within meters of the townhouses. And there are studies which I've linked in my deputation from Toronto, Vancouver, other parts of the world, that show that the height of apartment buildings next to communities, low-rise communities, has detrimental effects on their quality of life. The last concern I want to raise is regarding the detrimental effects of the construction-related noise on the health, physical, mental, and overall well-being of the residents of the community, especially the roads, the people who are living on the streets surrounding this, the 15 Harvey property. There is research, which I've also linked in my deputation by the University of Toronto, that indicates that high noise levels from construction activities can have significant health impacts, including increased levels of heart disease, cognitive impairment, higher level of anxiety, among other negative health outcomes. There was also an environmental noise study that I've linked, conducted by the City of Toronto, which also recognized that potential adverse effects of construction noise on the health of nearby residents. And then there are numerous studies connecting vibration from construction, like road construction and such, vibration that elevates levels of anxiety and it negatively impacts brain health. I'm sure the planning office has access to a lot more detailed studies than I was able to find. There's one more thing to consider, is that even though the pandemic restrictions have lifted, a lot of people are still working from home, or they're in a hybrid situation like this meeting today. So many people don't have the option of leaving their house from 9 to 5 and going to an office. Their office is now their home. The WHO, the World Health Organization, advises that outdoor noise levels during the daytime should not exceed 55 decibels. People working from home often leave their windows open, or they're sitting out on their deck working. Construction noise actually generates noise levels in the 80 to 90 decibel range, which is almost double of what the WHO recommends. So all this to say, one more thing, sorry, I just want to highlight, is that apartment buildings also, construction also is noisier than housing, like semis or townhouses, just because of their height and then the materials used. So all this to say, I would request the City Council to reassess the draft plan and explore the possibility of either replacing these apartment buildings with the townhouses and semis that are proposed for elsewhere on the property, or possibly relocating them to the south side of the property, because on the south side of the property right now is just industrial and then Kaplan, so nobody on that side will be bothered by the construction noise. Overall, me and the residents, we're not generally opposed to the development and progress of this area. We just want to strike a fine balance between the growth and then the well-being of the people living there currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. Are there any questions from members of council for Sarah this evening? Seeing that, I just wanted to clarify one comment there with regards to the density. So on the south, you're saying on the south side of Harvey,
right.
Side Brian, I guess, is a better location for density, is that?
For the apartments, yes, so closer to Kaplan, further from Harvey. So right now, the site plan is sort of the multi-units are closer to Harvey, so it would just shift them south a little bit.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the clarification. I'm going to ask Mark Resnick on behalf of Smart Centers to come to the microphone. Thank you. How are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome to Barrie Council, and the floor is yours, sir, for 5 minutes.
Your Worship, Council, thank you. I have some brief remarks. I have reviewed the staff report and support the recommendations from staff. I was in attendance earlier today at the General Committee meeting and heard the discussions and the amendments proposed by Councillor Harvey. I also support the amendment to the height restriction proposed by Councillor Harvey, and we accept the requirement on this future subdivision approval to conduct an updated traffic study. I'm here to answer any questions of council, but otherwise ask for your support of the proposal as proposed by staff and amended through Councillor Harvey's motions.
Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. That was the first time I've done that now.
Councillor Harris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I still owe you a few more than it. Just for the viewers there, the joke is at the beginning of my term and Mayor Nuttall taking office, he kept calling me Jim. Yeah, just a little clarification, if you would, because obviously there's been some change because of the school, and that was brought forward at the last minute, just literally the same day of your public meeting. Can you clarify some of the comments and concerns that Ms. Khan just aired in regards to shadowing and things of that sort in relation to your apartment blocks? Has a shadowing study been done with this revision, and will it have any impact on the distance? Because Megan Crescent's a bit of a distance away from where you plan on putting these apartment blocks.
Correct.
But will the sun, with them remaining at 6 stories, have an impact on residents on Megan Crescent?
We have not conducted a shadow study, as those blocks are subject to a future site plan approval, which is where typically those details are done. The plan of subdivision and the zoning bylaw establish the land use and the pattern of blocks and lots and roads. So while we have not done that, to your motion that restricted the height to, as we put forward, we're only proposing between 3 and 6 stories on those blocks. The mid-rise block that is closest to Megan, abutting the future Bryn Drive, is separated by the Whiskey Creek. So there is a considerable distance, and while I haven't conducted a shadow study, I would be surprised if there is any significant impact, but that could be vetted and a condition of a future site plan approval. And I think that would be the appropriate time to deal with it. And in respect of the block that is further south, adjacent to Bryn and next to the school block, if you can picture the draft plan, I don't have a copy handy. I feel confident in saying that it is a far enough distance away that there would be no sun impact on the adjacent residents. This shadow created would be within the lands.
Okay. And I know there were some comments made about moving those apartment blocks further south. I am here looking at your site plan right now, and I'm just not sure how that would even be feasible, because there's some EP lands, and then there's also the stormwater management pond right beside the EP lands. And then once you obviously get onto the other side of Bryan Drive, then you're dealing with the commercial side of your application.
I think you're correct in your comments. The EP lands are not developable. That is where Lovers Creek is. There are setbacks to protect the natural heritage that exists there. And the water course is also the outlet for the storm flows that come to the storm pond from the subdivision. Water goes downhill. That is the lowest point on the property, and Lovers Creek is the outlet for the residential portion of the subdivision. So it would be very problematic and unfeasible, I believe, to move the apartments further south. We have aligned them along Bryn Drive to be compliant with the new official plan policies that require higher density blocks to be on the arterial roads. So that was a conscious decision to keep them as far east as possible as we could within the design of the subdivision to mitigate those impacts.
Great. And just one follow-up, because I know there has been some concern and conversation around traffic. Obviously, there's 2 connection points to the existing subdivision at the south end of Thrushwood, where it curves and heads to the west. And then also on the north end of it, it aligns with Cranberry Lane. And I know you and I have had several discussions about this to try and see how we could potentially fix this. And it became quite clear to me that it's probably not fixable, because we have a massive hydro tower in line with the road that, in my opinion, would make most sense in aligning with Brookwood, what leads out to Veterans. Now, with these new studies, is your client open to some traffic measures as directed by the city staff as they review this to potentially lessen the amount of traffic that would be impacted and heading westbound into this existing subdivision, because especially the two connections that it aligns with, these people could have never in a million years ever guessed that they were purchasing a home on a property that would have aligned with a future subdivision, because this was originally commercial property also. Whereas people on Brookwood, for instance, potentially could envision that it could happen one day because they're dead smack in line with Mapleton and leads right out onto Veterans. So I just wanted to put it out there. I know you and I have had a lot of discussions, and I would just hope that you would confirm for the residents that are watching, and also the few here that have also provided a deputation and another one to come, that you are open to doing the best that you can for this subdivision to have the least amount of impact on them and their traffic.
So I will say that we are aligned to the recommendations of staff. We do feel that the traffic study has demonstrated that while there will be an increase in traffic, it is reasonable for the development, which in no way would I characterize as high density. I think the density of the subdivision, the heights, the unit types are all largely consistent with the adjacent community that has townhouses and semis. The apartments are new, but I think they are at a modest density. We agree to do the future study, and yes, to the degree we can mitigate and make changes, we are open to looking at those through the subdivision process.
Great, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions for the deputant this evening? Seeing none, thank you so much for your presentation. And we'll move on to the third presentation with regards to 15 Harvey Road, and that is Mr. Ed Greenwood.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. First of all, I wanted to thank Councillor Harvey and Senior Planner Celeste Kisemetry for putting up with all my questions and listening to all my concerns and trying to answer all my questions in the last couple of days. To boil it down, I have three concerns for the proposed development. There's very little green space in the new development. The population density, in my belief, is too high for the roads in the existing neighborhood next door. And most importantly, the traffic and pedestrian safety is impacted by that. So we all want to live in neighborhoods that are beautiful and safe. Simple as that. I live on Cranberry Lane, and it's exactly that, beautiful and safe. Very happy about things. However, the proposed development threatens that. Adding intersections, 2 of them on Thrushwood, is going to reduce the green space and significantly increase the volume of traffic in my neighborhood. So I am so happy that earlier today we voted, or the council voted, to relook at the traffic study that is that's part of this development. Because I'm concerned that the traffic volume is going to double or triple in my neighborhood. And just to put it in terms I think you can understand, the streets in my neighborhood have sidewalks on one side. They allow for parked cars on both sides. So a child who lives in I don't have any children, a child that lives on a street like mine has to cross in the middle of the road to get to a sidewalk. And they do that during a rush hour period when they're coming to and from school. And this is every day. So if you look at the proposed development and you read the documents, you have to dig a little hard, but you'll find out that there's 695 new residential units proposed. That's approximately 1,735 people in the new development. The existing neighborhood has about 384 residential units, and that's about 960 people by my estimates. the new neighborhood will have double the people in about the same amount of space, maybe slightly less, but it's pretty close. That's twice as dense. So, however, I don't think anybody would complain about the density if the development is well designed. However, and if you look at the new neighborhood and how it integrates to the existing neighborhood, it's really just a series of compromises. And what I mean by that is there's a new school needed, there's environmentally protected areas in the development, there's stormwater ponds, there's high voltage transmission lines. All these things complicate things greatly. And poor Councillor Harvey has had to try to deal with that and try to compromise. It's very complex. As a result, there's probably 101 opinions on what should be done, and so here's mine. Don't increase the traffic in the existing neighborhood. You're just putting kids at risk. This means basically don't connect the two neighborhoods with roads. Instead, make the new road in the new development a crescent that opens in two places on Bryan. That way, the only people that access that road are people that live in the neighborhood. This eliminates cut-throughs and makes the road safer for both neighborhoods, the children that go to both schools, because now it eliminates the cut-through traffic that impacts Trillium Wood as well. So, if you change the plan, you could make it so that it has bigger and better parks. You could add biking trails and walking trails around the parks and connect the two neighborhoods that way. Now, the question is, how do you get the population density? How do we get the residential units up? And we've mentioned that, as Sarah mentioned, you could build larger, when I say larger, I mean wider and longer apartment complexes, medium-rise complexes on Bryony, so that the traffic that the increased traffic that's needed from these units utilizes the new roads that can be properly designed for that volume. And most importantly, I think that we need to get an expert involved, somebody who understands how to design safe neighborhoods, how to route traffic in and around schools so that you don't have potential cut-through traffic going right by a school. Take a look at the development. There's a school and a very busy road right next to it. So why not put that school on a crescent? Why put kids in harm's way? So just because it's poor design. So I sketched up something, and I didn't have time to put it in the deputation, but I can send it to Gary and he can take a look at it. But that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your deputation this evening, sir, and for your directness as well as the timing, sticking to the timing. So thank you for that. Are there questions or items from members of council to ask the deputant? Seeing none, sir, thank you so much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks. The final deputation this evening is from Michael Vanny of Weston Consulting concerning staff report DEV 031-23, the application for zoning bylaw amendment 49 Collier Street in Ward 2. This is virtual, and I would like to now call upon Michael to deliver the deputation. You have 5 minutes for your deputation.
Good evening, members of council and those in the gallery as well as staff. I had previously requested to withdraw my deputation request, noting that my item was approved by general committee earlier this afternoon and just registered for council in case there were any issues, noting that it typically goes to the following week's council meeting. But given the accelerated process this week, I just wanted to be available in the event I was needed. But given everything that's asked, I just want to thank the general committee for that approval, and thank you to staff for their great work in terms of processing our application and moving things forward.
Thank you for your comments. We'll consider that at the end of the deputation. Are there any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, we will close deputations and move on past communications.
into committee reports. Deputy Mayor Thompson, I believe that you have the motions this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that Section A of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be received.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Corser that Section A of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023 is circulated be received. 23-G-131, report of the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee dated May 31st, 2023, and 23-G-132, report of the Finance and Responsible Governance Committee dated June the 6th, 2023. Are there any comments or questions with regards to the two reports? Seeing none, all those in favor, it is approved unanimously. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Corser, that Section B of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Corser, the Section B of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. 23G133, the Barrie Transit Network. 23G134, the approval of facilities, parks, and recreation asset management plan. 23G135, council fundraising policy. 23G136, community projects fund and update to the council expense policy. 23G137, the confidential correspondence and potential land disposition matter for Dunlop Street East area. 23G138, attendance at Mosaic, a festival of cultures in 2023 in Regina. 23G139, solicitor client advice, city projects. 23G140, zoning bylaw amendment 1012 Yonge Street. 23G141, municipal street naming for streets in the Sandy Creek Estates. 23G142, zoning bylaw amendment 54 and 76 Ross Street, as well as 61 Wellington Street West and 150 Toronto Street, Victoria Village. 23G143, the 2024 business plan and budget direction. 23G144, Rodney Street, no parking anytime. 23G145, water operations branch dedicated locator model agreement. 23G146, surplusing of city-owned property, a portion of 694 Mapleview Drive East. 23G147, surplusing of city-owned property, untraveled portion of East Street. 23G148, use of school facilities. And 23G149, invitation to present to council clean up Barrie. Are there any questions or comments with regards to those motions? I'm seeing none. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that motion 23-G-150 of Section C of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be amended by adding the following paragraph. That Section C of the General Committee report dated June 14th, as circulated, be adopted. The cheerful.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Corser, that Section C of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. This is 23G150, confidential property acquisition matter on Mapleview Drive. Deputy Mayor Thompson, I believe that you have an amendment.
I do, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Corser, that motion 23G-150 of Section C of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be amended by adding the following paragraph, that management of legal services or designate be delegated authority to expropriate the lands known municipally as 845 Mapleview Drive East concerning the Barrie Fire Emergency Service Station 6 new building development in a form satisfactory to the Director of Legal Services and Director of the Corporate.
We have an amendment moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Corser. The motion 23G150 of Section C of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be amended by adding the following paragraph, that the manager of legal services or designate be delegated authority to expropriate the lands municipally known as 845 Mapleview Drive East concerning the Barrie Fire and Emergency Services Station 6, new building development in a form satisfactory to the Director of Legal Services and Director of Corporate Facilities. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the amendment on the floor? Councillor Hamilton.
Can I just ask the impetus behind the motion to the amendment?
I think that's probably a referral to staff.
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Hamilton. Staff have been waiting an extended period of time for a response with respect to a negotiated agreement. Given the timing constraints that we have for the building of Station 6, we're seeking authority to expropriate to move the process along if necessary.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarity.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. On the motion as amended by the amendment from Deputy Mayor Thompson, are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that Section D of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Corser that Section D of the General Committee report dated June 14th as circulated be adopted. 23G 151, 2023, Community Benefits Charges Strategy and Bylaw. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the Community Benefit Charge Strategy and Bylaw? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor, and it carries unanimously. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that Section E of the General Committee report dated June 14, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Corser, that Section E of the General Committee report dated June 14th, as circulated, be adopted. This is 23G 152, the Waterfront Strategic Plan Update. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, and it carries unanimously. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that Section F of the General Committee report dated June 14, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Corser, that Section F of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. This is 23G 153, the Bradford Street Corridor Study Municipal Class Environmental Assessment. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the Class A? Yes, Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'm just tabling an amendment on this, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Jim Harris, that recommended motion items 3, 4, 5, 6 be renumbered 4, 5, 6, 7, respectively, of the motion 23-G-153. That an item number 2 be introduced as follows. That notwithstanding Section 2, that the right-of-way south of John Street be reduced from 34 meters to 26 meters. And then the third point, that Section 4 be amended by adding quote bracket, once a design that complies with the 26-meter right-of-way is completed and approved by City Council after the wording that staff be directed to conclude the Bradford Street Corridor Study Municipal Class Environmental Assessment. I have this in writing for the clerks, and I can also send it to all members of council for easy reading.
It appears that Councillor Morales and I had the same teacher teaching them how to print neatly. It's moved by Councillor Morales and it's seconded by Councillor Harris that recommended motion items 3, 4, 5, 6 be renumbered 4, 5, 6, and 7. Respective, you're going to have to help me, Councillor. So
I am sending it to everybody digitally in the next 10 seconds, if that helps, Mayor Nuttall.
If it counts for anything, you wouldn't be able to read my writing either, okay?
Okay. Okay, it has been sent. There we go.
Okay. That recommended motion, items 3, 4, 5, 6 be renumbered to 4, 5, 6, 7 respectively of motion 23G153. That an item number 2 be introduced as follows, that notwithstanding section 2, that the right-of-way south of John Street be reduced from 34 to 26 meters. That section 5, previously section 4, be amended by adding once a design that complied with a 26-meter right-of-way is completed and approved by City Council. After that, staff be directed to conclude the Bradford Street corridor study municipal class environmental assessment. Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Minetto, so I can speak to this. I appreciated the presentation from the individual earlier today. If the members of council who were, sorry, do I have to put it on the floor? Oh.
Nope, you've put it,
Oh, okay, hi there. Thanks, Deputy Mayor Thompson. So as the members of the previous council will remember, this came to a committee, a reference committee in June 2022, I believe. At the time, it was Hannah Bregman who presented and really kind of put this on everybody's radar about the obviously importance of increasing roads when appropriate and protecting land in areas that we want it to be walkable, pedestrian-focused roads. So I want to say that right away. I'm not taking credit. I'm giving a lot of this to Hannah Bregman. Now, the motion essentially listens to what the deputant was saying, specifically the point about straighter roads encourage speeding. A curvier design is more appropriate, especially as people are maybe really, they had just, if you're going down towards kind of the Tiffin Street, you just passed the water treatment plant. You just pass a bunch of brush. And we all know in our neighborhoods, when you don't really have homes, you have kind of that major road, you're speeding up. So a curvier design is a healthier kind of built form. So what this motion does, obviously the first renumbering it is procedural, same with the other one, but specifically 26 meters south of John Street is for the reasons that follows. If you go to, and hopefully everybody has a report on their iPads because I'm gonna have to get micro here. If you go to page 32, and I'll just wait a couple seconds, you see a bit of the breakdown as to how a 34 meters is envisioned. Now, I want to be clear because I don't want this to be the point. I understand that we're approving the right-of-way, and we can shift that right-of-way, and it can be more patios on one side, however Bradford Street develops. But it's really the point that Deputant and others have made about why do we need 34 meters. If you look at everything south of John Street, but if you're visually looking at your iPad, everything to the left, it's really a lot of it is our water treatment plan, Dixie Road there, and some parcels that we own on the south side. So a lot of this expropriation beyond the 26 meters is really going to be for either that median down the middle, that I understand is conceptual only, and depends how things, and it says right here, subject to future development applications. My concern, members of council, is if we approve an oversized right-of-way where we're taking that extra 8 meters, specifically mostly on the west properties, because we own the water treatment plant on the east side, we are almost unnecessarily setting back any potential redevelopments. So it's chicken and egg. We want future development applications to be good design, to be pedestrian focused, and to be safe, but we're taking right-of-way that anything south of John Street, we don't really need. Now, I want everybody to go to page 7 to understand how I can kind of back up my claim. So on page 7, if you zoom into the picture that's included in section 22, this is a conceptual only image of what Bradford Street could be. I love this image for really anything north of John Street. You have a median of 4.2 meters down the middle. It has trees, it has landscaping, it could have signage, that's great. It could be pollinators, that's great. You have really oversized sidewalks and buffers on either side, that's great. You could potentially have patios going some strategic locations. You have a bike path of 2 meters on either side, which is a little bit more than the 1.5, 1.8 that you usually get. And then you have a healthy 3-meter boulevard and curb for beautification, clear zone, and snow storage. So that design really does work north of Yonge Street, where you're going to have activation on both sides. The reason I'm putting this amendment, members of council, is I don't understand why we need a 3.1 meter sidewalk setback and buffer right beside a smelly water treatment plant. And that's no shade at the jobs, it's just the reality of that. Do we really need a 3.1 meters? Do we really need that oversized? So again, going back, if you're able to stick with me so far and go back to page 32, we're taking these meters not only to do that, but also then to put in this buffer. Well, the best way at speed management is to go with a 3.3 meter lane design, and not do that 4.2 meter median south of John Street. I am not proposing this north of John Street. And then just come down to a reasonable right of way. Because if you heard the deputy and you're looking at other properties aside from his, you're really taking a significant chunk out of those properties on the west side of Bradford, and we're essentially going to sterilize the development because those are thin parcels, and if anybody ever even put them together, well, you just took out 20, 30. His are a little bit different, they're a little bit more. And again, this is in front of a water treatment plant. So I'm not going to get prescriptive in my amendment to say that it should be 34 meters minus 4.2, take away the median, take away 0.8 meters on the travel lanes by taking them to 3.3, take away 1.1 meter on the east sidewalk and 1.5 from the east boulevard, and then 0.4 on the west one. That would get us to 26. But I really appreciate the deputy providing a tangible example how Hamilton does this. Hamilton essentially has a comparable road with comparable functionality that gets us to 26. So for those reasons, I've tabled that amendment. I am not touching anything north of John Street. And it also has some flexibility for staff to essentially approve everything else. I know the intersection is going to have to be rejigged with some of the alternatives possibly, and then they can come back to council once they've adhered to the 26-meter parameter.
Thank you, Councilor Morales. Are there any other questions or comments? Councilor Corser?
Just a question of clarity through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councilor Morales. Is this from John Street right through to, I guess, Essa, Lakeshore, Dixie, Essa, Lakeshore Drive? Are you following it right down to Lakeshore? Is that the full length you're looking at?
To Tiffin.
To Tiffin. Sorry, I missed that point.
No worries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, perhaps to staff, because I know Mr. Greatrix has worked extensively on this and provided various presentations. So I think I'd just like to ask staff, be it through Michelle or a member of your team, if you can speak to this off the cuff, or if you would need to take this away around justification for what has been brought forward in the design.
Through your worship to Councillor Kungle. Yeah, absolutely. The study team looked at the city's official plan, the transportation master plan, city standards, and also what's happening within the transportation planning sphere within Ontario and broader Canada. We're quite familiar with the Hamilton document. And just on the Hamilton context, it's largely trying to fit that within established neighborhoods in the Lower Mountain area. And it's also mid-block crossing, so they're going to have to make decisions on how to accommodate left turn lanes or make decisions about eliminating elements in that cross section because it's not wide enough to accommodate everything. And I know right now they're going through a process of transitioning to a design standard based on the guidelines, and they're fine-tuning and reviewing some of the elements just to make sure they actually work just with a more of a fine lens. On the recommendations in the Class EA, the study team reviewed that and generated a recommendation that didn't identify surplus lands. A key element that's driving this is the need to protect for HOV and future potential BRT on this corridor for that center two-way, or the center lane, center median. is the real estate that would really facilitate that in the future. If we lost that, that would really preclude or severely limit the ability to put that in place.
Follow up, if I may, for those that might not be familiar with the acronyms, could you identify your reference?
Yeah, absolutely. So the current 2041 Transportation Master Plan that is in place is recommending high occupancy vehicle lanes on Bradford Street, which is restricted to bus use or multi-passenger occupant vehicles. We're anticipating that there might be a need to step up in the future, whether that's 51 or beyond, to at least plan for potential BRT to support growth within the city of Barrie. And BRT, bus rapid transit.
Thank you, Mr. Greatrix. I guess I would say, I mean, if it needs further conversation, we could look at a referral, but I'm comfortable with that and I don't personally see a need to be amending it, but if it needs discussion, then maybe a referral.
I should just put my hand up. I know, Councillor Hamilton, that your hand was up as well. Before that, I had Deputy Mayor Thompson's hand up. I just want to remind, without making any comments here, I'm not sure this is the place where we get into the nitty-gritty of the width of roads. I don't know that this is the worst idea in the world, to be honest with you, what Councilor Morales is proposing. I just don't necessarily believe this is the right venue for us to get that into that granular, into these granular decisions. So I'll leave that, and Councilor Hamilton, if you want to say your word, because I think there's a referral motion coming to actually be able to take this and have a fulsome conversation about it, and have Councilor Morales bring all of these things in a way that I think makes sense. It makes sense to him and it makes sense to Councilor Harris, but we all need to be brought up to speed.
That's fine. If there's a referral motion coming, then I'll hold my comments and take it offline.
You want to speak first?
No, it was just in respecting what the deputant brought forward today and the encroachment on property. I do understand the concern, and I just wondered what's been done by staff and looking at the drawings myself, looking at there's opportunity to shift downwards where the water treatment facility is. But again, I think we're getting into nitty gritty. I think we've identified that there is a concern, and perhaps we need some time with staff just to say what else would be realistic or feasible. So let's take the time to do that.
Councilor Morales? But the comments are to be made with regards to the motion. Like the motion that you put on in terms of the amendment. If is there anyone who would like to ask Councilor Morales a question? Councilor, what is it that you'd like to say?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I just wanted to clarify, Councilor Congo, I appreciate the referral for context, and I understand this can be done in a better space, and I think everybody, including the resident, can appreciate that. Mayor Cam Guthrie out of Guelph is watching our meeting, I think for more than just one topic, but on this topic, he has said, City of Guelph is actually going to be shrinking the roads in their downtown from 2 lanes each side to 1 in each direction and building up patio and pedestrian surfaces more. Send me a whole bunch of supporting documents, including their downtown renewal document.
Point of order, Mayor Nuttall. I think this is beyond, he's already spoken once and he's kind of adding more to the meat and potatoes and justification for this amendment, so I'll let you rule on it.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Harvey. I think that makes sense. Councilor Morales, I think that the information that you have is probably valuable, as I know the individual who's providing it, but I think that we can actually take that to committee if the referral motion passes and bring it to the forefront to be able to be part of the discussion. Deputy Mayor, you have an amendment? The amendment can be referred with the main motion over to No problem. Go ahead.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kungl, that motion 23G 153 concerning Bradford Corridor Study, municipally class environmental assessment be referred to Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee for a further discussion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Kungl that motion 23G 153 concerning the Bradford Street Corridor Study municipal class environmental assessment be referred to the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee for further discussion. That's a referral motion, so we can't actually debate it. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and it passes unanimously. And Madam Clerk, will that be at the next meeting of our Infrastructure Committee?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to council, or to yourself, I should say. The next meeting is tomorrow, so it would be too late to put it to the agenda tomorrow, so it will be in September.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I will now go to Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that Section G of the General Committee report dated June 14, 2023, as circulated, be received.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Corser that Section G of the General Committee report dated June 14th, 2023 is circulated to be received. 23G 154, general provision parking prohibited around traffic calming. This item lost at General Committee. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Corser, that Section C of the General Committee report dated June 21st, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Corser, that Section C of the General Committee report dated June 21st, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. An amendment to the zoning bylaw, 15 Harvey Road, Barrie Bryan Developments, Inc. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. This has obviously been a bit of a trying one for some of the residents, and kudos to the two of you that have kind of taken the lead for everybody in your subdivision to be able to be the voice to get us to where we are today. Overall, the subdivision, I'll be quite honest with you, is, in my opinion, planned fairly well. Obviously, there's some certain connectability issues that hopefully will get resolved through the site plan. But I think with the two amendments that, thanks to all of you, that passed earlier today when it was at General Committee, will help staff get a little more information, especially when it comes to the traffic-related issues. In saying that, I do have one question, if I'm able to ask staff a little point of clarity when it comes to the site plan process and the questioning around the shadowing. What type of consideration would staff give when the shadowing study is actually presented? Because obviously none of that will ever come to this table. It'll be on the website and stuff. And what, if any, notification would occur as new documents are added? Would the residents that have filed be notified of these updates as they come?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey. So there will be a sign placed on the property when the project moves into site plan, if and when we start getting applications in for site plan, and it tells you at that time who to contact and how to contact the planner, where to find the information. So that information will be, as I said, it's not a public process, but it is public information. As it relates to the shadow study, obviously through site plan, they'll part of the submission requirements plans will be for a shadow study. Staff take a look at that. There are different things that the applicant can do to kind of mitigate some of that shadow, whether it's a shape, the building shape, the building orientation. There's definitely different things that can be looked at as the building gets closer to final design.
Okay, great. And then just one other question when it comes to the connectability of brine, because on the new site plan, I'll be quite honest with you, it's difficult to actually really determine 100% where these roadways are. Like, I mean, Street A and Street E and stuff, that shows very clearly. But can you please clarify for me, where is Brine Drive going through this subdivision? Because when I kind of catch the bottom of it, it looks like it might be off-center of the future right-of-way. Or, just to clarify, is that future right-of-way Brine Drive?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, I don't have it in front of me, Councillor Harvey, but it's my understanding that, yes, the way the draft plan is showing that is going to be the future Brine Drive.
Okay, great. And also, too, there was a really good point brought forward by Mr. Greenwood when it came to the road layouts and stuff. And I hope that there's some consideration given to it through the site plan process in relation to his comment and suggestion about this site being more of a crescent opposed to just one roadway leading out to Brine Drive. And I understand the reason there are other connectability roads in here is for fire access, because if you were to have a car accident or something like that blocking the road, fire needs a second way to be able to get in for fighting a fire if one were to occur. I just want to kind of have that remark that I hope that is a consideration that is taken out of the comments through the deputations here today, because obviously us around the table have no control over the site plan piece of it, and legislation no longer allows us to put a hold on site plan either. Although tonight all we're doing is passing the zoning. So would you be able to confirm whether that's something that would be in consideration as the site plan goes through its process?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, absolutely. As we get closer to the detailed design, we do look at all of those details. And again, as I said, while site plan isn't a public process, we certainly it is public information, and we do work with ward councillors as we move through, leading up to even issuing those conditions of approval.
Great, thank you. And I do appreciate all the time that yourself and your staff have put into this, along with the applicant, because I know there's been a lot of discussions behind the scenes and meetings to be able to get us to where we are today. And obviously, there's been several different options already explored and looked at. So other than that, I really appreciate how my two residents have really spearheaded this. A lot of good conversation. A lot of emails back and forth, and a lot of homework and knocking on doors. Maybe we have a future counselor in our hands here, but thank you for everything that the two of you have done on behalf of everybody in the subdivision. And with saying that, I do have full faith in our planning staff here to be able to get us to a good place, so that way this new subdivision doesn't have the potential or perceived impact that some may think it could have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Are there any other questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, Councillor Harvey, I know that you're going to stay on top of this one, and certainly it appears there's more development coming down the line in that area. So can certainly understand the concerns coming out of the community as Brine opens up over time. Certainly, it will create some excellent opportunities for the city, but also some big challenges for residents who live in the area, and we understand that, and we'll certainly keep you in mind as we're making decisions around this table. With that said, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and it carries. Deputy Mayor, where are we? We're done. Okay, so we have no deferred business, and we're going to move into direct motions. 13.1, the naming of the park and recognition of fallen officer Greg Piershala. Councillor Negussi.
Thank you, Mayor Nadal. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gary Harvey. Name of the park in recognition of fallen officer Craig Piershala. That Pat Oaks Park be named in memory of fallen Ontario Provincial Officer Craig Piershala, who tragically lost his life in the line of duty while responding the call near to Harglesville, Ontario in December 27, 2022. That Ontario Police College fitness testing type equipment be installed in the park at the cost to exceed $25,000 to be funded from the reinvest reserve. The city staff work with Officer Piershala family and designate from the Office of the Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police to determine an appropriate unveiling date.
Thank you, Councillor Negussi. It's moved by Councillor Negussi and seconded by Councillor Harvey. Naming of a park in recognition of fallen officer Greg Piershala. That one, that Bateau Park be renamed in memory of fallen Ontario Provincial Police Officer Greg Piershala, who tragically lost his life in the line of duty while responding to a call near Hagersville, Ontario on December 27, 2022. That Ontario Police College fitness testing type equipment be installed at the park at a cost not to exceed $25,000 and to be funded from the reinvestment reserve. 3, that the city staff work with Officer Piershala's family and the designate from the Office of the Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police to determine an appropriate unveiling date. The motion is, direct motion is on the floor. Councillor Negussi, would you like to speak to it?
Well, thank you, Mayor Nadal. Everybody knows about the story, and as a community, we have to recognize him where he went to school. And as a ward councillor, I reach out to the family, and they are extremely happy in recognizing him.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments with regards to this motion? Councillor Negussi, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I just wanted to add, I think when this is all done, this will be a unique place because with the addition of this testing type equipment that is in line with the Ontario Police College fitness test, it will then become a place where people that, whether they want to be a police officer or maybe even a firefighter, because the fitness testings are somewhat similar, that it will be a gathering place for those that are interested in the emergency services. And it'll be a place that will be very different than any other. I've heard of several parks named after police officers around this province that are killed in the line of duty, but that little added piece will separate it from the rest and will kind of put, I believe, our city on the map for doing that on behalf of the fallen officer, who obviously everybody knows grew up here in Barrie, and this particular park is directly across from the high school that he went to. So the family was ecstatic. I know when Councillor Negussi spoke to me after he spoke to the family about the location, that they were ecstatic and actually spoke about how they actually use that park. The boys would all go there and train themselves because obviously they're all very active. I know Greg himself was very active in the grappling and that type of thing. So that's where they were ecstatic that that was the park that we had suggested. And it is the largest park in Ward 6, so I think it's very fitting.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I think that this motion is fantastic, and I think that the respect for both Greg and his entire family is incredible, and the legacy that you're trying to create through this park, I think, is incredibly fitting. So I know this is a personal subject for for Councillor Negussi being the ward councillor in the area, but also Councillor Harvey in your line of work. And I just want to say thank you for taking the lead on this, you two, and bringing it forward and coming up with something that's very specific to honor both Greg and his family, who have given the ultimate sacrifice. I'll call the vote on this. All those in favor? It carries. Oh, I threw it on the floor. I apologize. It's amazing that's the first time that's happened in 7 months. I apologize.
Councillor Morales' point, is that putting it on the floor for real?
Yeah.
Just checking.
You guys are witty tonight.
As printed.
Weren't so witty earlier, but they're witty tonight. So, direct motion, Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. A move by myself, second by Councillor Morales, a motion without notice. The use of 29 Sperling Drive for a warming cooling center and food distribution center, that pursuant to section 7.1 of the procedural bylaw 2019-100, permission be granted to introduce a motion without notice concerning the use of 29 Sperling Drive for a warming cooling center and food distribution.
I've always wondered why we've handed it to the clerk and then back over to me when I'm sitting beside
been
you,
a long night
Deputy
for
Mayor
it.
Thompson. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Morales, that motion without notice use of 29 Sperling Drive for warming cooling center and food distribution, that pursuant to section 7.1 of procedural bylaw 2019-100, permission be granted to introduce a motion without notice concerning use of 29 Sperling Drive for warming cooling center and food distribution. This motion requires a 2/3 majority to hit the floor. All those in favor of the motion? And it carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Morales, to direct motion Sperling Drive, that staff investigate the feasibility of using 29 Sperling Drive as a warming, cooling, and food distribution center, and I can speak to that.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Morales, a direct motion with regards to 29 Sperling Drive, that staff investigate the feasibility of using 29 Sperling Drive as a warming and cooling and food distribution center. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nato. So in their original motion, this was part of it, and staff have, from the minute go, have worked very, very diligent and reached out to lots of organizations. And we're yet to have anybody come back with a viable option or even an interest right now. So it's very important with this whole motion that we actually look at every option, and this is a building that's owned by the city, that is vacant, that was, used by our health unit for vaccinations. So it's, this gives staff the opportunity to look at the feasibility, but it actually is, we're taking the ball and running with it. Like, we are the ones initiating it, where our partners haven't come to the table with a viable option, and we've got to do something. So, every day that passes, there's people outside, and this is a very important part of our original motion, and we've got to do everything as a collective group, in my opinion. So that's why I've kind of brought this forward. I kind of wish, people stuck around to see that, this council is actually taking this extremely serious. There was some information that was shared that wasn't true. Like, we really are looking for a full approach at this situation in our city. So I'll leave it there.
Councillor Kungle.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, a comment and then probably a question to staff. So noting that the location's in Ward 3 and that there is a relationship with the health units, I don't believe it's currently vacant. I could be wrong, but maybe I'll just redirect that to staff. And so through you to Ms. McAlpine, I'm not sure if there's still a current contract with the health unit around the use of that facility for still some vaccine-related activity. not to say it couldn't be available, but I'm also wondering if you could just give us a current state of operations as we know it, but also I think historically, this site came through an analysis, and do we know anything to date about whether or not this facility on the outset needed significant retrofitting or repair? So I'm assuming it's viable to look at, but I thought there was some history around that building in general.
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Kungl. There is still an existing relationship with the health unit who is leasing space within the building. And I will turn it over to Mr. Hughes to provide further details on the state of the building. In general, I would say that the structure is in good shape. It was, though, designed specifically for its past use and is not that easily reconfigured given the way it was designed. But Mr. Hughes can expand on that.
Through your worship to Councillor Kungl, members of council, Ms. McAlpine is correct. So we do have an agreement right now with the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. They would like to continue to use the facility until the end of this year. But as Ms. McAlpine said, I mean, structurally it's a very sound building, but it is laid out for a very specific purpose, and it's a big open space once you get in past the front doors. So could something be done? Sure. But it would take a significant amount of work, I would think. So we'd certainly have to take some time and look into it.
Thank you. And it's not to say that I oppose or not, but I think that's just a good reference about the building around making sure people are aware, is there a timeline to break a lease agreement? Should this be a viable site? And or that around the feasibility that there might be some pieces coming back with that are extensive around retrofitting. So that would be good to have as it comes back in general, if that is a viable location. So I'm not opposed looking at it, but I just wanted to bring that to light.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm of the same mind. I think it's well worth taking a look at. I don't know, the situation with the lease that we have there now, and it would be really useful to have some thoughts on what it might cost in order to set it up to work as a warming center or cooling center. And I'm hoping that when staff do their work, that they will also look at the county, because I think when the county was here the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, they said that a warming and cooling center was one of their priorities. So I would like to have them involved, and particularly have some of their money involved. Then I think in terms of the long-term operation, I think that's probably something that we should be thinking about as well. So I'm favorably disposed to looking at the building for this use, and let's see where it goes.
Understanding that it's council and you can only speak once, but I just a point of clarity. I am correct that nobody has brought forward another option. Is that correct? I didn't want to misspeak. CAO Probst.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Deputy Mayor Thompson. We met with the county on June 5th, a couple of weeks after council gave their omnibus direction to address homelessness. The county was certainly receptive to the idea, certainly of a warming center and what that could look like. I would suggest, based on the conversations on that date, they were not as warm to a cooling center. They had some different strategies on how that could be deployed. We did discuss a few sites and opportunities, and they committed to get back to us. So we are expecting to hear from them, I would say, in the next week or so, with some alternatives that we discussed in that meeting. So specific sites, specific options, not as of yet, but the dialogue is still open.
Maybe just a comment, just to something that was answered to a question. The intended use was of one. The health unit is using it as a totally separate use. That, when they come to us, we jumped on it to be assisted.
Deputy Mayor, if I could ask that you frame this in a question.
Yeah, it will be.
Okay.
Yep. 100%.
I'm gonna pay for that one after the meeting, all right?
At the end, I'm just going to say, don't you think so? So I'm just asking, so when the health unit approached us, we all hands on deck, yes, please. You know, I'm just asking to staff, was that conversation about retrofitting and stuff? And the reason why I'm asking this question is I think people need to know that this is something that is very important to this council. So instead of it's a intended use, and there would be lots of retrofit, and I respect that, but like, did we have the same conversation? We didn't say no to the health unit. We did it, right? So I just hope, and maybe that's my question, that it can be done. You know, and obviously anything can be done with money, but it is something structurally it can be done.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Thompson, I'm sure it could be. There might be some code implications, but sure, we could figure it out.
Councilor Corso, I think I had you next. Yes, Councilor Corso.
Well, first off, I'd really like to thank Deputy Mayor Thompson and, of course, Councilor Morales for bringing this forward, because, yes, thank you. We need to do something. We need to be proactive. I know that there has been some conversations in the past and issues with finding space with our community partners, and it's always been a challenge, especially during COVID. And with the county discussing transportation and shuttling of our unhoused neighbors to different facilities, yay for Sperling Drive. I'm just wondering if the location could be a challenge, and if we could get the Simcoe County with their ideas around shuttling to be of assistance with that as well.
Councilor Corso, I think those are all really good points, and I'm not sure if it was a statement or question, but I'm going to take it as a statement question and ask that maybe that be direction for staff to incorporate into what they're looking into as potential.
Thank you for the correction. Thank you for assistance. It's been a very long evening.
Yeah. For all. Any other questions or comments? I'm going to go to the seconder of the motion, and then I'll go to Councilor Harvey, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Deputy Mayor Thompson stole the words out of my mouth. I wish the crowd had stayed for this. It's easy to slice and dice what you want to see. It's easy to, like I said earlier, get the win and then leave, but it's the follow-up that matters. It's the delivery, and this motion definitely gets us closer to that. It's a city-owned facility. It's large. We've run medical vaccinations out of it, and it's right beside the health unit. So one positive ripple effect that this might have is maybe it improves transit in that area. That's always a positive thing. I believe we just approved zoning for multiple condos 2 blocks away. So this is the kind of substance that is moving the outcomes we want to see forward. And I hope that people watching the media report this, because Mayor Nuttall, I know that the original motions that we've all voted for, that we've tabled in one way, advocated for, you take a lot on just because of your role, Mayor Nuttall. I hope that they see that we're moving forward and leveraging our city assets. So I'll be supportive of this.
Thank you. And Councilor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Just wonder if I could get the motion read again, just because we don't have it in front of us. Just to kind of clarify a few pieces, because when it was first read out, I had no idea what was coming.
That staff investigate the feasibility of using 29 Sperling Drive as a warming and cooling center and food distribution center.
Okay, great, thanks. I will support this, and also to the piece of it that I really like is staff looking at the feasibility of it, because obviously we have several projects in the pipeline. This is a pretty large facility that might be too large for the purpose that we're talking about right now, but it's an asset that's probably worth a lot of money too, and potentially could be one of those assets that we're looking at selling. And could be building something elsewhere or looking at a lease somewhere else that might be a lot more feasible, because I've been inside that building and it's kind of got a bit of a weird layout because it was specifically designed as a police station. And it would be difficult sometimes to try and retrofit something, especially when you look at where the chief's office, for instance, was. It was right a separate entrance going right up above the front entrance. But I will support this because, like you mentioned, we got to do something. If you don't shoot, you don't score. And it's a positive move forward. Unfortunately, our other levels of government that should be actually tackling this, the county, doesn't seem to want to be as involved in this as we are, which is unfortunate. So hopefully that dialogue continues, and hopefully they come to the table fully as they should. But this is definitely going in the right direction, whether this site works out or whether another location works out. But in the end, again, this is just one more thing coming to this table that's trying to make this city better for everybody. So I definitely do support it.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, certainly support looking at this location. I think oftentimes, we can let finding the perfect location for these things get in the way of something that's good. The detriments of it, let's be candid, it's maybe a little far out. As been said, it wasn't built for this purpose. But I did get a vaccination there, and it wasn't built for that purpose either. And with regards to the positives, I think, when we're talking about our social services, and one of the things that we've been asking for years and years and years and years and years, to the point where Councillor Prowse and I co-authored a motion on this, is, back then Councillor Prowse, is the idea that you can have social services surrounded by supports, and there are some of those supports already there in the health unit that's next door, and in fact in this building. So I like the idea of looking at it. I hope that the county can come back with some options as well. I hope that other agencies can come up with some options, and we spin that all around and pick the best one and get it open. Because it is important that as we are making these changes, and there will continue to be things that come forward, whether it's through the public meeting on the 19th of September or for members of council, to improve the situation for those who are vulnerable and to improve community safety in our community. It's important that we actually have the supports in place. And so if nobody's willing to actually cooperate and get those supports in place, we may have to act in isolation, which is not what we want to do, but it may be a necessity after a certain period of time. So I think that having an option that we could readily use pending cooperation from the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit, I think is a good thing. So I'll call the vote on this. All those in favor?
Record a vote.
Record a vote. Sorry. Record a vote is being requested by Councillor Morales. Madam Clerk, this is record a vote.
Certainly. I'm going to start with Councillor Riema.
Yes.
Councillor Nixon.
Yes.
Councillor Kungle.
Yes.
Councillor Corser.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Negussi.
Yes.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Morales.
Yes.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yes.
And Mayor Nuttall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we are through direct motions. There are no presentations. We're at inquiries. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you. And because I could only speak to it once, my question is to staff regarding the passing of the feasibility of looking at Sperling. And so my question through you, Mayor Nuttall, perhaps to Ms. James Reed, because this is a public forum, I would really love some outreach to the health unit to make sure they're not hearing about this through media and they've got some context to it, knowing, as Mr. Hughes identified, that there is intention to extend that lease. So I think it's just helpful because I think we've also been very clear. We are very dedicated to a warming and cooling center. So I think it would be great if there was some outreach separately, worst case scenario, based on no one else coming to the table. And should this not be feasible, unless we're going to put everything in that we can if it's the only option, would a communication be timely then to also do a call out to say, we're looking, we're doing a feasibility study, if anyone's got space, could you reach out to us? Just as a proactive approach, as a backup.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungl. In terms of reaching out directly to the health unit, I would leave that in the capable hands of Ms. McAlpine and Mr. Hughes, who the lease is with regards to that. And we can certainly, I was already planning to, I just don't have a copy of the motion, so once I do have the motion, we are planning to do something on social media to make sure that residents are aware of it, and we can certainly include a call out in that regards. We wouldn't have an easy distribution list I mean, I can work with our economic development team, and maybe there's something there, but I think social might be the best for us to get that message out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kung. Are there any other inquiries this evening? Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and I'm going to apologize because this one just literally came to me a couple minutes ago, and I should have let Ms. Banfield and her team give them a heads up on this. So just curious if we could get an update on status and timelines of temporary speed cushions going out, because I haven't seen any of them out, at least in my neck of the woods yet anyway.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, we expect that we should be starting to see that I would think very, very shortly. We're still waiting for some of the locates, the utility locates, before different signage and things can be put into the ground. But it's my understanding that we should be seeing something for sure before the end of this month.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, it's not the first time I've heard the locate piece, and obviously, just so the public understand, the locates are not done by city staff. That's done by contractors, and that's been an ongoing issue ever since the pandemic, I guess, because that was an issue trying to get signage for bike lanes too in our ward. So thank you for the update.
Are there any other inquiries, Councillor Malice?
Very quickly, Mayor Nuttall, inspired by Councillor Harvey, Ms. Banfield, is there anything council can do from our end, maybe budgeting, maybe us responding quicker to staff for next year to maybe envision a scenario where these go in, let's say end of May? I understand there's limitations with street sweeping, but I echo Councillor Harvey, and I think I don't want to speak for any other councillors, but I've had casual conversations where we're getting grilled on this. So maybe if there's a change that staff might recommend for either budgeting or us getting the homework to you, and that means we have to change our practice with our residents for an earlier implementation. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to staff, is there anything we can do?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Morales, this year, Dave Friery's team was extremely efficient in getting the street sweeping done. So ultimately, we plan for it, for everything to be kind of working around the street sweeping. This year, they were actually super efficient. And so I think that's why the gap seems a little bit longer than normal. And then, as I said, just kind of tying in some of the locates. Certainly, councillors making their recommendations in a timely manner helps, but ultimately, the contractor requires the package to be complete. We can't give them piecemeal. We can't say, here's Ward 9, here's Ward 8. They require it all to be complete so they can do everything at once. So the sooner we do that, the better.
Thank you.
Any other inquiries? We'll move on to announcements. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I have one announcement that they are paving Tiffin Road. That is something. And secondly, on July 7th, just let me get that for sure. I think that's the Saturday. Is it the 7th or the 8th? Sorry. The 8th is the Saturday. So on July 8th, a Saturday at the Barrie's Farmers Market. I might be careful saying this, but I've given myself up to the dunk tank. So for everybody online that writes great stuff about me, come bring food and take a shot. The food is going to Youth Haven. There was another option, and it was the pie eating contest, which I thought I was suited for. But Councillor Nixon will be the judge of it. I wanted to participate in the eating of the pies, but they put me in the drunk tank. So
The drunk tank?
the dunk tank.
Drunk tank.
I thought we were back to talking about 29 Sperling again.
Just for the record, I don't drink, but after being dunked a couple times, I might. So, I would like to see lots of people. It's for a great cause, and there's lots of people that are going to participate. It's going to go on for about 2 hours, and that's all.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Now that we have a distribution list from across the country, I'm sure that we can let them all know where you're going to be on July the 8th. That's basically it. That's tourism. Actually, yeah.
Come see the beast.
Okay, moving on from that, we're on to Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Nuttall. I've got 2 announcements. So Communities in Bloom, we've got some deadlines coming up, but I want to encourage that for those looking to participate in Communities in Bloom, we need your photos submitted on your beautification efforts on your commercial property, private property, by June the 28th. This also includes schools. So if you've got a class that wants to get involved, we will be highlighting your photos in Barrie's 2023 Communities in Bloom Gallery and on city social media channels and a digital publication. If you also have a little bloomer in the house, kids aged 4 to 14 can participate by submitting photos of flower gardens, container projects, and vegetable gardens. So please do look up through the City of Barrie website, Communities in Bloom. And while all that is happening, this is a great week for our pollinators. So I'm very excited to be, if you find the Ward 3 councillor on the weekend in a bumblebee costume, you might win a rec pass. So if you find me, come and tell me all about how much you love pollinators. I'll be with Pollinate Barrie at their pollinator parade and maple muse planting. That is happening on June the 24th from 12 to 4 at 58 Maple Avenue. And we are asking you to help us plant the newest native pollinator habitat in the downtown. And that's in concert with the Barrie BIA and the McLaren Arts Centre. More information is available. Please check out Pollinate Barrie on their Facebook page or website. And my compliments to the founders of Pollinate Barrie, who are 2 Ward 3 residents and have really leveraged resident engagement through Barrie Urban Gardeners and their initiatives with putting a spotlight on Barrie as a bee city and all the work Stephanie and the team does on program across the city. So happy Pollinator Week, tons of activities happening. Please look at the City of Barrie website and social media for options to get involved.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle. Any other announcements around the table? Seeing none. I'm pleased to announce that the City of Barrie has recently been awarded a $325,000 grant from Natural Resources Canada and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to assist in the city's efforts to incorporate community energy conservation and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. For further information, please visit barrie.ca/climate change. The City of Barrie is excited to announce the Canada Day activities taking place on July 1st. Activities include Meridian Place featuring family-friendly programming, Canadian wildlife display from Speaking of Wildlife, busker performances, a variety of vendors, and live entertainment on the Meridian stage featuring Baytown Big Band, Rockabilly Joe, Tex Rexman, and belly dancing. The fireworks show over Kempfelt Bay will begin at 10 p.m. Open Air Dunlop, presented by Downtown Barrie Business Improvement Association, will also be taking place on the 1st along Dunlop Street, featuring a variety of activities and more. For more details, please visit barrie.ca/Canada Day. We'll move into the bylaws. Deputy Mayor Thompson, how fast can you do bylaws?
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Courser, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, third, and finally passed. Bill 066, 069, 07, 07, 071, 072, 073, 074, 075, 076, and 077.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councilor Corser, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, third time this day and finally passed. Bills 066, 069, 070, 071, 072, 073, 074, 075, 076, and 077. Are there any comments and questions with regards to the bills that are being moved? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Corser, leave be granted to introduce this following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 78.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councilor Corser, that the confirmation bylaw leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 78. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the confirmation bylaw? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I see Councilor Harvey and seconded by Councilor Harris. All those in favor? We are adjourned at 10:57 p.m. on the 21st.
That concludes the update from City Hall. Thank you.